Welcome back to Reconfiguring Reality. I'm Laura, one of your hosts,
And I'm Jesse.
I'm the Jericho.
and today we're going to be discussing marijuana. All right, so we all know, obviously, about marijuana. We know what it is, or do we?
I, I don't know what it is. What is it?
Oh, don't lie.
I,
Marijuana is a mind altering drug produced by the cannabis sativa plant.
But is it really mind altering? Is
It's
it?
classified as a mind altering drug, yes. Marijuana is grown in the United States, Canada, Mexico, South America, the Caribbean, and Asia.
Oh, it's gotta be grown in like Russia and Europe and stuff like that too.
hydroponically, sure, but not naturally. Russia's too cold.
Mm.
What is
Well,
hashish?
wait, isn't technically Russia part of like when people talk about Asia, Russia's included in that, isn't it?
I have no clue. I wouldn't think so.
Now I gotta go back to geography.
Yeah, go ahead and look that up. Okay, so um, I was always confused by hash and hemp. Like,
Well,
what are
isn't
those?
hemp is the like the leaf and everything, isn't it? Like you make hemp rope, you make it out of like the leaves and stuff like that because growing you the from the marijuana plant, the only usable part that it has cannabis is like the buds. And then hemp would be a derivative of like the leaves, I thought.
So, actually, that's not completely correct.
Oh, educate me.
Yes. So I looked up the difference between hemp and marijuana, and let me see if I can find the website name. Nope, I didn't write it down. But hemp and marijuana are actually the same plant.
Yeah.
Hemp is used to mean cannabis that contains 0.3% or less THC by dry weight. Marijuana is anything over than 0.3% THC by dry weight. So it's all the
So,
same plant. It's just,
It's concentration.
yeah.
It's like
oh,
selective breeding.
Uh-huh.
It's
And
like
then
grapes, right? Grapes are grapes, but like depending on how you breed them and what you crossbreed them with, they become something different.
hash is the oils from that cannabis plant. And apparently, one drop of hashish oil is the same has the same effect as one joint. So it's
hmm.
very concentrated. Now, I'm unfortunately allergic to the hemp plant, so I don't know any of this by firsthand knowledge.
Oh.
But okay, what? Sorry.
Oh, I was just I I don't know any of this. I just go to the store and buy the chocolate bars, and I don't pay attention to that kind of stuff.
Do you
So
have you ever paid attention to the other names or the street names for marijuana? Can you
yeah,
name them?
Mary Jane, Green Lady, weed,
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 the reefer.
reefer. I mean, pot. It was always, hey, what kind of pot do you got? Oh, I got some hash. Okay, that works.
What about Aunt Mary?
I've never heard it be called Aunt Mary.
BC Bud?
I mean, like I know there's like strawberry Kush and bubblegum Kush and Black Widow, White Widow. Like I know like the
There's a
different
strands. Yeah.
strands, but
Boom.
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 Here comes the ready or not.
Like he said
Never heard
earlier, chronic.
of
Chronic, the sticky icky,
the sticky icky.
Dope. Ganja.
wacky
See,
tobacco.
dope is more of like other
I thought it
things.
was like a heroin. But
Yeah, that's what I've always heard it
No, that's
be.
the black tar.
Well, that's one
Yep.
of them, but anybody I knew called heroin dope.
Right.
So,
Then
Look,
you
man,
then you've got
Dare taught me that all drugs are dope.
then you have grass, hash, and herb. Hydro, indro, joint. Of course, you said Mary Jane and pot and reefer. Skunk, smoke, weed, and yerba. And of course, the devil lettuce.
oh, puff puff pass.
See, now hydro is a type of weed. It's not the same thing. It's grown hydroponically. That's what they're talking about. It's like stems and sticks,
There's something
grass
else.
clipping.
The wacky tobacco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've heard that one.
Yeah. So I know today we want to focus on the laws of marijuana and federal laws versus state laws.
Like the biggest thing that I found out, and this was like a year or two ago, is even if so, let's say like in Minnesota, it just got legalized last year. You cannot get a loan from the bank in order to open a business that sells it, even though it's legal in your state, because it is not federally legal.
It's because federal law trumps state law.
Mm-hmm. And it's something about the banks being federal, you can't get a loan. So I'm like, wait, so you're telling me this stuff's legal, but I have to front the whole cash and pray to God I can come up with enough to start this business that would help build the economy. Got it.
Right. Did you know that hemp and marijuana was actually legal in the 1600s to the 1800s?
Yeah.
It was
Mhm.
a legal
Did you
substance.
know that our founding fathers wrote about hemp and how they enjoyed smoking it on the porch?
I did not know that. No.
I did not know that. No.
Yeah. Many of our nation's leaders in the past, because it was a widely known um, form of medication. Like we've just begun rediscovering what we already knew about it, that it
Yeah.
helped certain conditions and
Yep.
Well,
certain
like for
problems.
me, I use it one to help me sleep and two for my anxiety because I don't get the same side effects as I do from any of the medications I've ever been prescribed, and the fact that I will not take like Xanax or anything like that because it's highly addictive. So I'm just like, you know what? I'll have two pieces of chocolate and at 8 o'clock, and I'm on a normal sleep schedule now where I'm in bed no later than 11.
Nice. So,
Uh,
good.
oh, I was going to say, to comment earlier though, federal law does not always trump state law.
According to the website of the lawyers that I looked up, it does
So
for marijuana.
federal mandate, well, it's not just that, but so federal law is supposed to be all encompassing, right? But there's legislation within states that give them a certain governing power. So like for example, the border thing that's happening right now, right? They were like, hey Texas, this is gonna happen, and Texas says, bite me, and they rolled out the National Guard. They're technically in defiance of federal law, but under state law and their own jurisdiction, they're well within their rights. And there's plenty of contradictive laws between federal and state. A state will make something legal or illegal according to the federal government, but it then comes the question of how do you propose to handle that? Are you going to roll the army in there and enforce the law. They're going to send the FBI in hopes that the state's just going to listen, and it becomes an issue of manpower and priority.
Right. But according to
Mm.
legalmatch.com, when it comes to the laws of marijuana, if there's a conflict between federal and state law, federal law always prevails. Going back to when it was legal, though, in 1619, the Virginia Assembly passed legislation requiring every farmer to grow hemp.
Why?
Uh, they encouraged the use of hemp to make items like rope, sails, and clothing,
Yep.
and
Oh,
they allowed it to be used. They allowed it to be exchanged for legal tender in the states of Pennsylvania, Virginia, and Maryland.
It was a very valuable resource.
Yeah. In the late 19th century, we saw marijuana being used as an ingredient in many medicinal products and was openly sold in public pharmacies.
Mm-hmm.
well, yeah. Didn't they also like have like cocaine and stuff for the longest while that was legal?
I mean, yeah. I mean, most people didn't drink or take cocaine straight. It was mixed in as an additive
Yeah, like it would. It really was actually Coca Cola, right?
for a short time, yeah. Because
Okay.
back in the day, Coca-Cola was marketed initially as like a cure-all remedy for various things like stomach problems.
Mhm.
Blah, blah, blah. But um, but yeah, that's most medicines at one point or another were advertised that way because they don't really do once they discovered them, especially scientific discovery now compared to then, they didn't necessarily do a lot of research or had the funds and manpower to do those high level researches. So they would say, hey, this does a thing, and not really understand the ramifications, like radium. You
Uh
know,
huh.
they used
Yeah.
to put it in glass and they put it in drinks, and people had radium parties and radium face paint, and they're like, oh, great, it causes cancer and it's killing people. Maybe
Yeah.
we shouldn't have
Wasn't
done
that
that.
also? Didn't they? The radium was the like with the little clock dials or something too.
Yeah, they used to. So
Okay.
remember the old like watches back in the day that would have like the glowing face numbers on them and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they did back in the day. They used the glowing paint to put stuff like that. And women used it to spice up relationships back in the day. They would wear it with like and put it on as like lipstick and stuff, so they glow in the dark. It was like a new
Interesting.
sexy
Wow.
thing to do. And they're like they had no idea they were killing themselves.
Lovely.
Yeah. Okay.
In 1906, the Pure Food and Drug Act required labeling of any cannabis contained in over the counter remedies. 1900 to 1920s time frame. Mexican immigrants introduced recreational use of the marijuana leaf.
So like smoking it.
Uh huh.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And what time did they introduce that?
1900 to 1920s.
Oh yeah, it was introduced way before then.
Oh yeah.
According to this timeline that I found on PBS, it was around that time that they came over here and introduced us. So, I don't know. The fear of marijuana began in the 1930s when research linked the use of marijuana with violence, crimes, and other socially deviant behaviors committed by underclass communities. By
I
1930,
I mean, I would say it was like violence. I mean, I don't know any stoner that's violent.
well, we know that now, yeah, absolutely. We look at this and we're like, what? Like, the stoners I knew all just wanted to eat and take a nap, you know?
That's all I want to do.
By 1931, 29 states outlawed marijuana.
Interesting.
The Federal Bureau of Narcotics was created in 1930. They, the FBN, Federal Bureau of Narcotics, were the ones that enacted the Uniform State Narcotic Act in 1932. And that's the act that encouraged state governments to accept responsibility for control of the issue of concerns regarding the rising use of marijuana and research linking its use to crime and other social problems, which put pressure on the federal government to take action. So the government was like, these people are all crazy. The states are now in charge of making their own rules, so we don't have to deal with them.
Okay.
So that was 1932 that act was enacted. By 1936, um, showing of narcotics in films was banned by the Motion Pictures Association of America. In 1937, the Marijuana Tax Act was enacted, and this was a statute effectively criminalizing marijuana, restricting possession of the drug to individuals who paid an excise tax for certain medical and industrial uses. I don't know if that act is still in
That'd be
circulation.
interesting if it was.
Yeah. In 1944, the New York Academy of Medicine reported that, contrary to earlier research and popular belief, the use of marijuana did not induce violence, insanity, or sex crimes, nor did it lead to the addiction or use of other drugs.
Thank you.
Go New York. Also in the 1940s, hemp for victory became a thing. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
During World War II, hemp and other materials were critical to the production of marine cordage, parachutes, and other military necessities. Farmers
Hmm.
were encouraged to plant hemp and were given seeds and granted draft deferments to those who stayed home to grow the hemp. I didn't know that. I found that very interesting.
Yep. Drugs are only a problem until they're not.
Right.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. Like, there are some drugs that, yes, people will be violent on and stuff like that, but I guess I'm a little biased because
Yeah,
I
I've never
don't
seen
know, but
anybody get angry while high. Not on
unless it's mixed with something, then that's different. But yes, I agree.
yeah, we're not talking about laced. We're talking about straight marijuana. Okay, between 1951 and 1956, enactment of federal laws were set. Oh, let me try that again. Between 1951 and 1956, an enactment of federal laws which set mandatory sentences for drug related offenses, including marijuana, was set. The first offense for marijuana possession carried a minimum sentence of 2 to 10 years with a fine of up to $20,000.
Mhm.
That's a lot for possession of marijuana.
Well, it's just like nowadays they still, like, in certain states where they have three strike rules, these guys are getting life in prison just for getting caught three times with marijuana, like they're a freaking.
In the 1960s, use became more widespread in the white upper middle class. In 1968, the creation of the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, or the BNDD, was what?
BNDD. I don't think I've ever heard of BNDD.
Yeah, it's the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. It was a merger of the FBN and the Bureau of Dangerous Drugs of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. And there's a reason why you've never heard of it, and we'll get there in a little bit. In 1970, we saw the repeal of most mandatory minimum sentences. The Comprehensive Drug Abuse Prevention and Controlled Act categorized marijuana separately from other narcotics and eliminated mandatory federal sentences for possession of small amounts. NORML was also formed in 1970, and NORML is the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. NORML is still active today. I actually have research from that group. In 1972, we saw the Schaefer Commission. Have you ever heard of the Schaefer Commission,
Nope.
Jericho?
I have not.
The Schaefer Commission was appointed by President Nixon, and it considered laws regarding marijuana and determined that personal use of marijuana should be decriminalized. However, Nixon rejected these recommendations. Excuse me. Even though Nixon rejected these recommendations, 11 states decriminalized marijuana and others reduced their penalties. So from 1973 to 1978, Oregon, Alaska, Maine, Colorado, California, Ohio, Minnesota, Mississippi, New York, North Carolina, and Nebraska all decriminalized marijuana. But what does that mean? What does it mean to have it decriminalized?
Doesn't it mean like uh, I'm trying to think how to word it.
Decriminalization in terms of marijuana means that there's no arrest, no prison time, or criminal record for the first time possession of a small amount of marijuana for personal consumption.
Yeah, but what is a small amount? Because my small amount is probably totally different.
And I'm sure that each state has their own set amount for that.
They do.
Yeah.
They have different measurements of it. States also have measurements of what's you're allowed to do. Like some you can have it, but you can only carry so much on you, even if you have like a weed card or it's whatever, because it's enough for personal consumption is however they mandate it. And anything over that, they consider you a pusher, even if that's not your intention. Like there was a guy who grew his own in his backyard, and he got arrested and tried because he had an abundance of plants growing, and even though they were all for him, and he proved that they were all for him, because he would go through these crop rotations where he would put it all in his basement and stuff. Um, they just were like, well, that's too much of a threat. Like you could sell that to somebody.
So the reason why that you've never heard of BNDD happened in 1973.
Oh.
In 1973, we saw the merge of BNDD and the Office of Drug Abuse Law Enforcement, which was ODALE. They merged to create the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, or the DEA.
Oh, the DEA.
Oh, okay. So it went from
FBN,
that to the
yeah, it
DEA.
went from FBN to BNDD to the DEA. Right. In 1974, High Times came out. And if I did my research correctly, High Times was like a magazine or something.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Is it still around?
I believe so, yes.
Very nice. Very nice. In 1976, the parents' movement against marijuana began. This is a nationwide movement lobbying for stricter regulations of marijuana and the prevention of drug use by teenagers. This movement was actually one of the biggest supporters of uh, the war on drugs in the 80s. Not just marijuana, but the war on all drugs.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh. In 1986, the Anti Drug Abuse Act made mandatory sentencing um, come back, I guess, for or did something with mandatory sentences.
Mhm.
And then in 1996, the state of California decided to legalize medical use of marijuana.
Mhm.
That is all that PBS had on their timeline. And I was trying so hard to find other timelines, you know.
Yeah.
But I yeah. So I do have a chart. I don't know how I'm going to talk about this chart because it's a chart. But it has the year and um the year it became legalized for medical use and the year adult use was legalized for most of the states.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And a lot of the states that have medical
Mm-hmm.
do have adult use. But why does West Virginia not have medical use, but it does have adult use? That's interesting.
They may have just legalized it all outright without having medical use for it.
Huh. And there's a few here that are still only legal for medical, but not recreation or adult.
Hmm.
Now, I know a lot of the states for medical, you need to get the medical card.
Yes.
And do you know why that is?
No.
It's because it's classified as a Schedule 1 narcotic.
Oh,
The Controlled Substance
that's stupid.
Yeah, the Controlled Substance Act or CSA was enacted when President Nixon was doing his thing back in 1970.
Mm-hmm.
The
Because
statute,
we all love Nick.
right? The statute was an effort to combine all previous federal drug laws and allow the federal law enforcement of controlled substances, uh, serving as the legal foundation in the federal fight against drug abuse, to sort the drugs into 5 schedules or categories. These categories are based upon the substance medical use, potential for abuse, and safety for dependence liability. The DEA is responsible for determining the designation and evaluation of the drugs. Schedule 1 drugs are the highest risk or danger, where Schedule 5 is the group of narcotics with the lowest potential for addiction. I just said that marijuana was a Schedule 1 drug.
Yes.
So it's in the category of highest risk or danger, which I know even people who don't smoke disagree with.
You.
Mm-hmm.
Schedule 1 drugs are drugs with no currently accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse, which we've seen in recent years, that this is not so true anymore for marijuana, right?
Correct the mundo.
Drugs and
Well,
what?
I would say, well, marijuana isn't a hard drug. Its most damaging effects happen on when it's introduced to someone who's still developing.
Right. But they're saying that it's no current medical use applications, and that's not true.
Yeah, I mean it's never been true, but that's propaganda for you.
That's why there's been
Yeah.
movements made to relieve to remove marijuana from Schedule 1, and it's been going on for years. So it's weird. But other drugs in Schedule 1 category with marijuana are drugs like ecstasy and heroin and peyote and LSD.
I mean, but is peyote really that
Did you say coyote?
peyote?
No,
You
it
you
sounded like she said coyote.
you actually cut out there. So
Oh,
is
oh,
peyote what?
peyote. Peyote, sorry. Peyote.
Is it what though? Because I don't know what.
Isn't that
Peyote is
like,
a desert plant that you can use as a hallucinogenic.
yeah, but it's been proven to be used before too.
I have no idea. I've. Is it dangerous?
Not
Yeah.
that I know of. It is. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. So,
Any psycho hallucinogenic drug, toxin, anything, they're all dangerous.
okay.
It's just it depends on what level and what dosages and all that kind of stuff you get into. Some of them are just straight, basically poison. Other
Mm.
ones like so pot is not good for you. It has potential uses that are good, but it in and of itself does not provide you with a huge like medical benefit. It's not like a
Yeah.
vitamin that like I didn't have my pot today, so therefore
I'm
I'm
gonna
I'm
have
I'm
issues.
gonna have a bad day. Like that's not how it works. And again,
Never mind
like
my ex.
anything, it depends on the person, right? So for example, you know, some people are allergic to antibiotics, right? That
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that it's bad for everyone, but people also don't take antibiotics for fun. right?
No,
So
they
that's
take it because they have an infection.
Right.
exactly. So that's the problem with these substances and marijuana is although it's a safer drug, it is still a drug. And if it's not being used for a medical reason, then you're causing issues, basically, is what it boils down to. And a lot of people misrepresent it, but at the same time, a lot of people who are like, yeah, it has all these great benefits, the people touting those benefits aren't using it for those benefits. A lot of
Mhm.
them just want to be able to buy pot legally and get high. There's a catch 22 there.
Yeah, you have the people who sit there and abuse the fact that there are medical uses and they just want to do it to giggle and have fun.
Hmm.
Like with me, I use it, like I said, I use it for my anxiety and to help me sleep because I've tried the over the counter sleeping stuff, like nothing really helps. This helps me to the where I can sit there and get to bed at a decent time. I'm waking up, I'm not feeling all weird and jittery and all that jazz.
Schedule 2 drugs are drugs with a high potential for abuse, with use potentially leading to severe psychological or physical dependence. These drugs include methamphetamine, cocaine,
Mhm.
fentanyl, Vicodin, oxycodone, and Adderall.
Oh,
Fentanyl is
that's yeah,
just
that
that's a suicide pill.
I believe fentanyl should be in Schedule 1, but
it should be, but they make money off of it.
Schedule 3 drugs are drugs with moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. These drugs include anabolic steroids, testosterone, and ketamine.
Ketamine, really?
Mhm. I'm not
Hmm.
quite 100% sure what ketamine's used for.
So ketamine's like a horse tranquilizer, pretty much. Like it,
So
I
it's
think only vets can get it.
no, why is it a Schedule 3 narcotic?
Good question.
As long as someone can get high.
Schedule 4 drugs are drugs with a low potential for abuse and low risk of dependence. These drugs can include, or this category of drugs can include Xanax, Ambien, Ativan, and Valium.
Yep, but yet those are okay, even though they are highly addictive, and
But they're saying
that's
that there's
okay
a low
though.
risk of dependence or addiction.
But if you already have a tendency to be you have a how do I want an addictive personality. There we go. It doesn't matter how low of a chance there is for addiction. It you're gonna get addicted to it.
Huh. All right. Schedule.
Like
Sorry.
that's the rough part is like I sat there and I have a highly addictive personality. So I am perfectly fine with being a pothead, but you give me anything stronger than that and it's going to cause issues.
Got it.
So it's just one of those things where people risk it for the biscuit sometimes.
Schedule 5 drugs are drugs with lower potential for abuse than Schedule 4 and consist of preparations containing limited quantities of certain narcotics. This category of drugs are referred simply to cough suppressants, medicine that slows or stops diarrhea, medicines that stop coughing, and medication to relieve pain.
But technically isn't that what hair or not heroin, but Percocet and them are for is to stop pain. So
Where is Percocet in all this?
Percocet probably is with Vicodin.
Percocet is Schedule 2. Oh, Percocet
So,
contains codeine, which makes it a Schedule 2 narcotic.
oh,
Okay. And we talked about the movements to get marijuana off the Schedule 1 because it is now being used for
mhm.
medications. And I know working in a pain clinic in Pennsylvania that you could get a medical marijuana card because that's the only legal way to use it for medical purposes, right?
It should be, yeah.
Patients typically need to have a diagnosed medical condition, and these conditions vary depending on the state or country's laws. Can you name 9 of the most common conditions? Just guessing.
Uh,
Hyperhidrosis.
I don't know what that is. That is not on my
It's
list.
sweaty palms.
No. Oh,
It's
fine.
one.
Okay, all right.
Sweaty
Holland
palms.
and Oates, I got you. That's not the right name, is it?
No,
No.
it's not.
Damn it. Garfunkel and
Holland
Oates.
and Oates.
Garfunkel
Yeah,
and Oates.
Holland and Oates is a
It was
country
Holland and
music
Oates,
duo.
not Garfunkel. It's Simon and Garfunkel.
No, it's Garfunkel and Oates. Oates? Is that right, babe?
No, it's Simon and
No, no, no.
Is this like some inside joke? Because I'm starting to get mad. It's Simon and Garfunkel and Holland and Oates.
Garfunkel and
Garfunkel.
Oates is the name of a female duo who does comedy music.
Get fucked up for your hyperhidrosis, which is sweaty palms, in case you need a diagnosis.
But no, Sweaty Palms is not one of them.
Okay.
You have one.
I have one.
Yes, you do, ma'am.
Borderline personality disorder.
That is not on-
anxiety.
Nope.
Depression.
Nope, well- Depression is not on here. Nope. PTSD.
PTSD. Oh.
PTSD
Interesting.
is one of the 9 most common diagnoses for.
I'm surprised
medical
depression
marijuana.
isn't.
I don't know what I just.
Thought brings you down, not up. You don't want to give a depressed person a downer.
Oh.
Well, that's true.
They usually subscribe uppers. Downers are usually for people who are like ADHD and stuff to chill them out.
What else? Oh, the reason why it's okay for PTSD is it can be used to manage symptoms including anxiety and sleep disturbances.
Oh, okay.
What's another major common illness that people can use marijuana for? Think of the movie Stepmom.
Cancer.
Very good.
Glaucoma.
Glaucoma is also on here as well. So for cancer, it's used to manage pain, nausea, and appetite loss associated with chemotherapy. And glaucoma, medical marijuana can help lower the pressure that leads to glaucoma and to prevent damage to the optic nerve.
What's an appetite?
Appetite? Did I say appetite?
Yeah, you said appetite. I was like, interesting. Appetite.
And appetite loss associated with chemotherapy. Associated with chemotherapy. Thank you. I did not know that epilepsy is one of the top 9.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It can help reduce seizures.
Yeah. Some forms of
Did not know that.
epilepsy, especially treatment-resistant epilepsy, may respond positively to medical marijuana treatments.
They've done a lot of new studies with it. It's also effective in helping people with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
I do know that it does help with children with autism, depending on the symptoms they're trying to stop.
All right. That's not one of the most common ones.
No, it's
And
just the
neither
only
is
reason why
Parkinson's,
I
actually.
know. Yeah, the only reason why I know that is because we recommended it, but military insurance said nope.
Right. What about chronic pain?
Mhm.
That's one of the
Yeah, like people who suffer from fibromyalgia.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Multiple sclerosis.
MS, yeah.
It's used to alleviate muscle spasms, pain, and other symptoms. HIV or AIDS is on here. It's used to alleviate pain, nausea, and stimulate appetite.
Okay.
Another chronic pain that's listed as a diagnosis on here is Crohn's disease. because it can alleviate the pain there again. And then
Yeah.
the ninth one is actually ALS.
Lou Gehrig's disease?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. Marijuana can be that's a diagnosis that you can get the medical marijuana card. Now, I went above and beyond for this research, and we'll just skip over the first part because she's not here. But in Minnesota, medical cannabis has been legal since 2014. Patients can only purchase non smokable forms of cannabis, but a recent revision to the program allows for the smoking of cannabis. The modification will take effect by March 21st, 2022. I don't know if it did. Did it?
I believe so, yes. And now all of that's kind of moot because you can just go and grow your own plants, or
There you go.
you can't buy it yet, like already grown in most places, just because you have to grow it now.
Mhm.
Because we can't order it from California or Colorado and have it shipped in to sell already grown because federal laws.
Right. Makes sense. So the qualifying health conditions for Minnesota's medical marijuana program include Alzheimer's disease, ALS, autism, cancer, chronic motor or vocal tic disorder. Is that Tourette's?
So Tourette's.
Okay. Chronic pain, Crohn's disease, epilepsy, glaucoma, HIV, IBD, intractable pain, MS, obstructive sleep apnea. Interesting. I have that. um, PTSD, seizures, severe and persistent muscle spasms, sickle cell disease, terminal illness, and Tourette's syndrome. So I guess chronic motor and vocal tic disorder is something different than Tourette's. But I don't know what it is.
I guess.
In Missouri, the qualifying health conditions for the medical marijuana program include a chronic medical condition that is normally treated with prescription medications that can lead to physical and psychological dependence. That is the first disease on this list. A chronic medical condition. Okay. Alzheimer's, ALS, autism. I don't know how to say this one. Wasting
Spell it.
syndrome.
Yeah.
CACHEXIA. What is that? Is that like from not eating?
We'll check it out. You got Google.
I'm gonna have
Give
to.
me 1 second. You said wasting syndrome?
Yeah, it's CACHEXIA.
Wasting syndrome is a common complication of HIV infection and is marked by progressive weight loss and weakness, often associated with fever and diarrhea.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Cancer, chronic pain, Crohn's disease, debilitating psychiatric disorders, epilepsy, glaucoma, hepatitis C, HIV and AIDS, Huntington's disease. There's the Huntington's, babe. IBD, intractable migraines unresponsive to other treatment, MS, neuropathies, Parkinson's disease, PTSD, sickle cell anemia, seizures, severe persistent muscle spasms, terminal illness, and Tourette's syndrome. That's a lot. What are you laughing at?
Because it was funny. You're like, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Well, okay, well think of it this way. Like what is the worst side effect for someone who isn't allergic? It is you get giggly or you get the munchies. But like I've heard side effects for some of these conditions, like not necessarily the conditions you've listed, but where it's like death or excuse me, or like a prolapsed like this or like it's like, do you really is it are the symptoms really that bad for certain things
You mean
to
you mean this prescription may cause.
This prescription may cause suicidal thoughts, this, and like they're going through everything super super fast, and I get it, it's a small percentage, but it's like, why would you even, I don't know.
But because it doesn't always, one thing doesn't always work for everybody.
No,
Whether or not you're
I get
allergic.
that, but it's one of those things for me where it's just like, for certain things, on like when I wanted to quit smoking, there was Chantix or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, well, suicidal thoughts are a side effect that could happen, and since you already have a mental illness, we got to watch you more on it." And I'm just like, I was highly allergic to one of the ingredients. I don't remember what it was, but I was highly allergic to it. But I'm like, so you're giving this this medication to a person who already has mental illness issues, and one of the biggest side effects is suicidal thoughts. Like, there are certain things sometimes where it's just like, maybe these drugs should not be highly touted for certain types of people.
Right. Yeah. And that's why some of the drugs that they say that that's a side effect, I'll tell them no straight up.
Yeah, no, and that's why I'm still smoking at times.
Yeah. Yep. And quitting cold turkey could be more dangerous too. So.
Yeah, so it's one of those odd things.
But you don't.
But no,
But you don't smoke marijuana. You just smoke cigarettes, or do you?
yeah, I just smoke cigarettes. I do edibles. I cannot. The funny thing is I can smoke a full cigarette, but if I try and hit a bowl, oh my god, does my throat burn and I cough a lung up. So I'm like, nope, edibles is where it's at for me.
All right. So some of the state medical cannabis laws I found are, as of April 24th, 2023, 38 states, 3 territories, and the District of Columbia all allow the medical use of cannabis products. As of November 8th, 2023, 24 states, 2 territories, and the District of Columbia have enacted measures to regulate cannabis for non medical adult use or recreational use. So we're getting there. Maybe the government will actually catch up at some point, like the federal government.
Hopefully. Mhm.
And then the medical, no, then the federal laws that I have, and I found this on legalmatch.com. Um, First of all, the state medical cannabis laws I found on the normal website, NORML website. The
Mhm.
federal laws were from legalmatch.com, and it says that possession and distribution are illegal under federal laws. Federal law makes it illegal to use, grow, and sell. There's no exception for medical or recreational use. Possession of even a small amount is a federal criminal offense, and possession with intent to distribute is a misdemeanor punishable by up to 1 year in prison and a fine of up to $1,000. And again, if there's a conflict between federal and state law, federal law prevails.
Yo.
So I guess it depends on if you're on the highway, what cop pulls you over. I don't know. But yeah,
Pretty much.
I don't know why they're so hard on the marijuana laws.
Because of the stigma of it's a gateway drug, even though it's not.
Yeah, but alcohol does so much more damaging shit, and it's legal.
Well, like the biggest thing that people said when we were first starting to legalize it was, well, how people are going to drive on it. No, most of us don't. There are some people who can. Like for me personally, I know I can't drive after I've had an edible. So I take my edible and it's like, nope, I ain't going nowhere.
Time for bed.
But like, so Minnesota used to have it where you could carry a specific amount on you and you would not be charged. It would be confiscated, but you would not be charged with it.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was someone who was pulled over for a DUI that had marijuana on them, and they just confiscated it. It was not added to his charges or anything like that.
Hmm.
I can't get over the fact that like people have like bowls or stuff like that, they get charged with like paraphernalia, and I was like, how do you know they don't smoke tobacco out of it?
Yeah, sale of paraphernalia is a felony. Which I find interesting because aren't there like
And
head
just
shops?
out of everything, I was like, you guys are worried about marijuana over like cocaine or meth or anything like that.
Right. I would think meth would be the bigger fish to fry.
Mm.
While District of Columbia residents have passed Initiative 71 legalizing the possession of the possession and home cultivation of marijuana for personal use under DC law, these provisions only apply when one is on DC property, not federal property. Federal land comprises 18 square miles within the District of Columbia.
Yeah,
Mar-
so like if you're on the steps of the White House and you get searched, it's going to be a federal crime.
yeah. Federal law also applies to offenses involving interstate commerce and importation from other countries. The sale of paraphernalia is punishable uh, by up to 3 years in prison.
Yeah, but again, the thing is you can walk into a head shop or a tobacco shop and buy glass bowls and stuff like that because technically you can smoke tobacco out of them. So that's where I get confused, where you can walk into a store and buy it, but if you get pulled over and it's sitting in your center console, let's say brand new and clean, they can hit you with paraphernalia.
That's crazy. What about hookahs?
Oh, I don't think those are chargeable because of the fact that like there's hookah bars, or at least there are in Minnesota. I don't know about any other place, but I've gone to a couple hookah bars. They have amazing tea, by the way.
Did you know that if you smoke marijuana out of a hookah thing, it could actually damage the hookah? Apparently, marijuana is
I did
stickier
not.
than the hookah stuff, so.
Well, I do know. I think federally, again, it is illegal because me and my ex husband wanted to get a hookah to just smoke like hookah out of. But because he was in the military, technically, even though we didn't live on base, since we used BAH to pay for rent, it was considered government property where we
Well,
lived.
wasn't your ex husband considered government property because he was in the military?
Yes.
So, I mean,
He So it's one of those, but see, then you know, like how there's damage to government property, these guys get tattoos, technically aren't they damaging
well,
government property
I
yet?
would think so, but I don't know all the laws.
Yeah, no, it's just I just find it hilarious that we're not even on government property, but they're like, oh well, you use government money to pay for housing, so this is now our property.
Right. So, the mandatory minimum sentence, according to the NORML website, is uh, when somebody is convicted of an offense punishable by a mandatory minimum sentence, the judge must sentence the defendant to the mandatory minimum sentence or a higher sentence. The judge has no power to sentence the defendants to less time than the mandatory minimum. A prisoner serving an
Why
MMS.
mandatory minimums are bullshit.
What?
I said that's why mandatory minimums are bullshit.
Yeah, a prisoner A prisoner serving an MMS for a federal offense and for most state offenses will not be eligible for parole. Even peaceful marijuana smokers sentenced to life MMS must serve a life sentence with no chance of parole.
Mm-hmm.
Miscellaneous section of this article states the sentence of death can be carried out on a defendant who has been found guilty of manufacturing, importing, or distributing a controlled substance if the act was committed as part of a continuing criminal enterprise, but only if the defendant is 1. The principal administrator, organizer, or leader of the enterprise, or is one of several such principal administrators, organizers, or leaders, and 2. The quantity of the controlled substance is 60,000 kilograms or more of a mixture or substance containing a detectable amount of marijuana, or 60,000 or more marijuana plants, or what? Or if the enterprise received more than 20 million in gross receipts during any 12-month period of its existence. There's a death
Wait,
penalty for
hold on.
marijuana.
You're telling me that if I made what you said 20 million?
In gross, yep.
If I was the head of like a huge drug ring
Mm-hmm.
and all we sold was marijuana
Mm-hmm.
and I had like $20.8 million in sales in a 12-month period, they can sentence me to death
That is what this says.
for pot.
That is what this says.
That seems a little overkill.
I believe that to be so too. Yeah. Crazy, right?
Like that's just and like I said, that's just as bad as like the 3 strike rule, where if you get caught 3 times with just an illegal amount of pot on you that you use for recreational use, like going to jail for life for that. Like it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I agree. In an article from 1996 from that normal NORML twice as many defendants imprisoned for marijuana possession under tough 3 strikes law than for violent crimes in 1996. I can't imagine that it's gotten any better.
Mm-mm.
The federal 3 strikes provision calls for a mandatory term of life imprisonment for defendants convicted of a serious violent felony who have 2 or more federal or state serious violent felony convictions or more or 1 or more of such felony convictions plus 1 or more federal or state serious drug convictions.
Hmm.
So why is marijuana in that? I guess it's because it's a Schedule 1, right?
Yeah.
Serious drug offenses for purposes of Section 3559C consist of federal drug kingpin offenses, the most severely punished of the federal drug trafficking offenses, the smuggling counterpart of such trafficking offenses, and state equivalents of any of these 3. Where the prosecution relies upon a state drug trafficking conviction, for example, it must show the amounts of drugs involved warranted treating. So, what? Why is marijuana in that? Can you get a
Mm,
trafficking offense if you have a lot of marijuana on you?
you can, yes, because it's considered you're distributing.
Ugh.
So like let's say the legal amount is an ounce and you have 5, they could consider you a dealer. It just all depends.
Interesting. So, more of the stories: just don't carry it, guys. Just leave it at home. No, I think the government needs to take a look at these laws. And
Yeah, but then you got the people on the right that say one thing, you got people on the left, and then there's the people who actually like are like, hello, we actually do this. We know the effects. Can you speak with us?
yeah, yeah.
Instead of listening to your weird constituents, maybe listen to the people who actually use it.
But the thing that blows my mind though is like these state governments are saying it's okay legally,
Mm-hmm.
like medically and recreationally. And you know the
But
federal
you
legislation, like
gotta
the
look at
federal.
you have to look at the states that have it. Like here, hold on. Okay, so states who legalize recreational marijuana. Where is it? Hold on. Ah, what happened? Where'd that map go? Give me one second.
um for recreation: Alaska, Arizona,
Yeah,
California, Colorado, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Illinois, Maine, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan. Minnesota's not on this, but this might be old.
yeah. So states where legal recreational marijuana has been approved: Colorado, Washington, Alaska, Oregon, Washington, D.C., California, Maine, Massachusetts, Nevada, Michigan, Vermont, Guam, Illinois, Arizona, Montana, New Jersey, New York, Virginia, New Mexico, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maryland, Missouri, Delaware, Minnesota, and Ohio.
Yep.
Um, retail marijuana hit the shelves in Vermont in October 2022, in New York in December of that year. So the first state to approve it was Colorado in November 2012. Same with Washington. Alaska, November 2014. Oregon, November 2014. Washington, D.C., November 2014. Then Colorado, Maine, Massachusetts, Nevada, all November 2016. Michigan, Vermont, Michigan in November 2018, Vermont in January 2018, Guam was April 2019, Illinois, May 2019, New Jersey, November 2020, Montana, November 2020, South Dakota legalization measure approved November 20th. It was struck down by state Supreme Court November 2021.
Huh.
So the state Supreme Court made it illegal. Arizona was November 2020, New York, March 2021, Virginia, April 2021, New Mexico, April 2021, Connecticut, June 2021, Rhode Island, May 22 or 2022, Maryland, November 2022, November, same with Missouri. Delaware was April 2023, Minnesota, it was Democratic Governor Tim Walz on May 30th signed a bill to make Minnesota the 23rd state to legalize recreational marijuana. It was not, you weren't able to start buying it though until like September. And then Ohio was the last one of in November of 2023. So we have 24 states out of 50. Guam, I don't think is considered a state. It's a what? A U.S. province.
I have no idea. Maybe a territory.
Adults over the age of 21 can possess up to an ounce of marijuana. It can grow up to 6 plants, though no more than 3 can be mature. So yeah, it's kind of like Minnesota, where you can have up to 8 plants, 4 mature, which means flowering. Um, but President Biden proclamation on October 7th, 2022 included a request for the Secretary of Health and Human Services and the Attorney General to initiate the administrative process to review exponentially how marijuana is scheduled under federal law. Um, But if you look at all of the states that are it's legal, a lot of them are blue states. You have nothing. Tennessee, from like Tennessee down to like Florida, there is not one single state. And if you go over to, so a lot of the states, timeline of cannabis laws in the United States, it shows, so there are states like North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma. Okay, so if I drive down here, Missouri is blue. What is under Missouri? Like Louisiana, medically, it's so like there are some states that are medically it's allowed, but if you literally go from like the border of Oklahoma and down, it is not recreationally legal. Idaho, Wyoming, Kansas, which I'm surprised that Missouri it's legal for recreational use, but it's not in Kansas.
It's 2 different states.
Yeah. And then so like Nebraska, it's decriminalized. And same with North Dakota, but it's still criminalized in South Dakota.
Arkansas is below Minnesota. I mean,
No.
Missouri.
Oh.
Sorry.
Okay, I was like,
Arkansas is below
no,
Missouri.
there, darling. It's not. It is not under us. Iowa is.
I don't know what's legal in Pennsylvania, to be honest with you.
But
Just
it's
medical.
yeah, it's just it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you guys see that the majority of states that have it legalized, they lean more towards like liberals
Right.
a little bit more.
Right.
But it's one of those things where it's like it's really not that bad. I will admit there have been times where I'm like, I want to drug my child and give him some edibles, but I don't because he's not over the age of 21.
Right.
That's another thing. They're not saying as soon as you turn 18 you can do it. It's like alcohol. You have to be 21. At least in the state of Minnesota, you do.
For recreation, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
I believe maybe even medical wise, but since we don't need a medical card anymore.
I remember when Pennsylvania's medical marijuana card came into effect. Because I worked at a pain clinic at that time.
Nice.
So that's going to be it for today's topic of marijuana on Reconfiguring Reality. We hope
Thanks for coming.
We hope you all have a good night or week.
And don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, share,
comment,
and puff pass.
And puff pass. Goodbye.
Bye.
But it's not an addiction, 'cause my doctor gave me a prescription.